My friend Liz Joe asked me today to do some shows, some cooking shows on how to make dinner for 12 people in a half hour. And it's not exactly that fast that we do things around here, and it usually means a lot of pre-prep. But I thought I'd step you through some of our fun recipes. And tonight, I'm going to start making some short rib beef and barley soup. So here I'm just going to give a little shout out to Chase Hill Farm, which is where we got these short ribs from. They're great folks in Warwick, Mass. Wonderful grass-fed beef and a lot of other cool stuff. And here are the short ribs. They're just, it's not necessarily considered a fancy piece of meat, but I think it's one of my favorite pieces of the beef. And I throw in, this is when I'm making any kind of an animal stock, I'll put in some vinegar. This is our vinegar from 2015 when we had a huge apple year. I think we made 30 gallons of vinegar. We're still using it. And then I'll put in some sea salt. This is from the Celtic sea salt people. We get the light gray, which is chunky, and it's a little cheaper that way, but it's got all the wide mix of minerals. And then I use some of our filtered water to fill up the pot. And this is going to go on the wood stove and cook all night long. And so we'll lose a lot of water in that process, but I'm going to cook these all down and be able to pull the beef right off of the bones by tomorrow morning. So that's the first step, and it's going to go right over there on that stove over there. In many traditional cultures, and really in Europe and all sorts of places, seemingly not so much in this country, maybe more in New York City where you have more ethnic populations, people do a lot of shopping every day for their food. And here we do a little different kind of shopping, which involves going to our various locations for our food. We have a little bit of a problem right now because our root cellar got a little cold and our vegetables are frozen in. So I'm going to have a little bit of a need to get these things out. But I have some rutabagas here. There's a rutabaga and a second rutabaga. Okay. And then we're going to try to get up celeriac. These guys are ugly as sin, but really tasty, tasty, tasty. I'll show you when they're all cleaned up. I'm going to get some carrots out of here. See if I can get them out without having off the basket free. There's one. And here's another one. I'm hoping that our produce wasn't frozen. We did keep our door open, but we put it down to 0 the other day. It really had an impact on things. Okay, so we'll get a little bit of carrot here. Cut, well, maybe less than normal. And, a couple onions. Maybe 3 onions. And I'm going to get some potatoes. I really want to save most of our bigger potatoes for, not bigger, the medium-sized ones for our planting this spring. So I'm going to use some of these little guys that are too small to plant. Put them in today's soup. I think that's another thing to think about with soup or stew or whatever. That we're oftentimes using up things and not always thinking of things being primo for sure starters. Okay, so we have some red potatoes and some yellow potatoes in there. So potatoes, rutabagas, carrots, and celeriac and onions. Go to the frozen section of the market, and here we have some celery in here somewhere. What does that say? Let me see. Know what that says. Oh, butternut. Here's some celery. I'm gonna get a quart of it. In fact, maybe 2 pints. This is a nice thing that we make every fall. Celery is one of those amazing things for your whole system that when I have to give it up and go into winter, and it's very upsetting to me because it's so good for everything that ails you. And what we do is we harvest the celery and then just throw it in the food processor with some water, and then freeze it in containers and then get it back out and use it as we would a stock. Now we're in another freezer here. A lot of walking around. You get a lot of exercise when you cook all your frozen victuals. And we're going to get this nice pork stock out, which is we're going to add to the beef stock. Stocks generally are so good for you because what we do, we boil down the bones and the fat and the cartilage and all the tails of the pigs, the snouts, everything. Same for beef or for chicken or for turkey, but boil them all down in a big pot of water, and then you harvest all that stuff and run it through the food processor, and you have a very, very rich stock that's so good for your rebuilding your gut, which is what a lot of us need to be doing. Well, we all need to be doing it constantly, but particularly in today's day and time with leaky gut, this is the right thing for it. The last couple things that I'll grab are this parsley, which I froze in the summertime. Parsley is a simple thing to freeze. You just cut it off the plant and then chop it up and then throw it in a bag. And it's very, very tasty. Also, huge vitamin C and lots of minerals, good stuff. And then a little bit of barley. I like to throw in a beef and barley soup. This is a seed, a grain that has a small amount of gluten in it, but doesn't usually have the problems that wheat, gluten, and those kinds of allergies cause people. So use it with caution, but it nothing beats a beef and barley soup. And lastly, I almost forgot, we have to stop in the canned goods section. And here we pick up a quart of tomatoes. Again, beef, and goes really well with tomatoes. So it's a nice thing to put together for this soup. We, to get these canned tomatoes, we do a very simple process. We harvest our tomatoes, cut them up, take out the cores, but nothing else. We leave the skins on. The skins have a lot of value. And then cook them down in a big 5-gallon pot with some salt. And when they seem like they've come down a little bit, lost a little bit of their water, we just pour it off into these quart jars and put canning lids on them and can them. Go through that canning process of putting them in boiling water, the jars in boiling water with the lids covered with water. Bring it to a boil and boil it for 15 minutes, and then you're done. Take off the screw-on lids and leave them in your cupboard until you're ready to use them. Here we are on the soup. I have picked out the bones from the short ribs and just ripped the beef apart a little bit. And you see some of this fat is congealing right now, but it'll go away again and become part of the broth once we warm it up. Here is the pork stock that I'm going to add to that. So we're going to have a beef and pork combination. I'm going to throw in the cup of barley. And here is the frozen celery in water that will melt into the soup also. This is going to be really helpful for our lower intestine as we try to make sure that we have plenty for those guys down there at the bottom of the whole bottom of the barrel, bottom of the digestive barrel to digest. And here's some tomatoes, which have all sorts of amazing properties, canned from this summer. And here are all the roots that I went down and got out of the root cellar. And I see I have a problem here because my pot is too small. So we're going to have to take a short break and get a bigger pot. A slightly bigger pot looks also looking like it's almost near capacity. I forgot to mention that I'm going to put in some wine cap mushrooms. We harvest these wild. They come up all over on the farm. We just harvest them and dry them in our food dryer. These guys add another wonderful little crunch, plus a lot of immune system support and a lot of minerals. Always good to have some mushrooms around. We can put a little more salt in there. I'm not afraid of salt. I have low blood pressure. I think what I'm important thing is that you're eating a really good diet of things that are not, with no crap, you know, no processed foods, no unwhole foods. Here's some garlic powder. We take our garlic and dry it in our food dryer, and then once that's done, we put it through the food processor and get it all nice and small, so it makes a good addition to all of our cooking. Here's some bay leaves. Those were not raised here. And then it's the final thing, I guess. I think I have everything else, is the parsley. I'm going to put all this in and let it cook on our wood stove. So I'm going to put it in that pot. I'm going to add a little wood to the fire here. Make sure this is going well. And I think in about an hour, it should be in a good position to have a wonderful beef, barley, etc. soup that's full of everything that your grandmother ever thought you should eat. So Jack, what do you think about this beef and barley, etc. soup?
I like beef and barley soup. I think it's a good combination. I'm not generally a big guy on grains, but barley seems to work well when it's with beef. And most of your soups are very delicious, and this one is too.